Level 1. Arriving at the rock. You wake to the sound of chains, not because you're dreaming, because they're fastening them around your wrists. Today is the day you've been dreading ever since the judge finished reading your sentence. You are no longer being transferred between ordinary prisons. You are being sent somewhere far worse. Somewhere prison guards whisper about. Somewhere inmates fear more than death. Alcatraz. The Rock. You don't know exactly what waits for you there. You only know one thing. Almost nobody ever leaves the island until their sentence is over. And some never leave at all. The prison bus stops with a sudden jolt. The doors swing open. Cold air rushes inside. Guards order everyone out. You climb down one careful step at a time, your ankles connected by heavy irons. Every movement reminds you that freedom has already become a memory. Ahead of you sits a gray ferry rocking gently against the dock. Its destination isn't marked. It doesn't need to be. Everyone on board already knows where it's going. You shuffle forward with dozens of other prisoners. Nobody speaks. The only sounds are chains scraping across steel and waves crashing against the pier. A guard removes your handcuffs long enough for you to climb aboard. Then he locks them back into place. The ferry pulls away from shore. You turn around one last time. San Francisco slowly begins disappearing behind the morning fog. The city doesn't look far away. You can still make out buildings. You can still see the hills. For a moment, it almost feels close enough to swim. Then another prisoner quietly laughs. You thinking about it? You don't answer. He shakes his head. They all do. He points toward the dark water surrounding the ferry. The bay decides who gets out. You look down. The water is darker than you've ever seen. Cold wind stings your face. The current moves faster than you expected. Even from the boat, you can feel its strength. Minutes later, someone whispers. There it is. You look ahead. At first, it appears through the fog like nothing more than a shadow. Then it grows larger. Concrete walls, steel bars, guard towers, rows of tiny windows. An entire prison sitting alone on an island. No neighborhoods, no roads, no crowds, only rock, cold, gray, silent. As the ferry gets closer, you notice armed guards watching from above. They aren't watching the island. They're watching you. The ferry docks. One by one, prisoners are ordered onto the pier. You hear the command immediately. Eyes forward. You obey. Nobody wants to attract attention on their first day. You walk through enormous steel doors. They close behind you with a heavy metallic boom. The sound echoes through the building. You realize something unsettling. That sound wasn't just a door closing. It was your old life ending. Inside, everything smells of disinfectant and cold concrete. The walls are spotless. The floors shine. The silence feels unnatural. This isn't chaos. It's control. Absolute control. A guard stands before the group. His voice is calm, almost emotionless. Listen carefully. You have been sent here because you failed to follow the rules somewhere else. Alcatraz is not here to punish you. It is here to make sure you never forget those rules again. Nobody moves. Nobody even swallows. Then he continues. You have 4 rights: food, clothing, shelter, medical care. Everything else must be earned. The words hang in the air. You suddenly understand what makes this place different. They're not trying to make life miserable. They're trying to remove everything except survival. Your name is called. You step forward, face the wall. A guard searches every inch of your body. Your pockets are emptied. Your belt disappears. Your shoelaces disappear. Your watch. Your wallet. Even the photograph you carried of your family. Gone. You instinctively reach toward it. The guard looks directly into your eyes. You won't need that here. The words hit harder than the search itself. You are led into another room. Your hair is cut short. Your fingerprints are taken. You are photographed from every angle. Then someone hands you a folded bundle of clothing. Gray prison shirt, gray trousers, heavy black shoes, a denim work jacket, a prison cap. You remove your own clothes. For a second, you hesitate. Those clothes are the last thing connecting you to the person you were before today. Then a guard clears his throat. You change without another word. When you look into the mirror, the man staring back hardly looks familiar. You are handed a small metal tag. It bears a number. The guard doesn't call you by your name anymore. Neither does anyone else. From this moment forward, the prison knows you by a number. You follow another officer through endless corridors lined with steel bars. The footsteps echo. Every door opens with a loud mechanical click. Every door closes even louder. Finally, you stop. The guard unlocks one narrow cell. A metal bed. A thin mattress. A sink, a toilet. A small shelf. Nothing more. This is your home. You step inside. The cell is barely large enough to stretch your arms. The guard steps back into the corridor. For the first time, you hear the unmistakable sound. Clang. The steel door slams shut. You turn toward the bars. The guard is already walking away. You are alone. You sit on the edge of the bed. The silence is almost unbearable. Then, from somewhere deep inside the prison, a man begins screaming. Not shouting, not arguing, screaming. The sound echoes through every corridor before suddenly stopping. You wait for someone to explain. Nobody does. The prisoner in the next cell finally speaks. His voice is barely louder than a whisper. Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. And for the very first time, you begin to understand why they call this place the Rock. Level 2. Learning the rules. You don't sleep much your first night. Not because the bed is uncomfortable. Because every sound feels unfamiliar. Steel doors slam somewhere down the corridor. Footsteps echo across the concrete floor. Keys jingle. A distant voice shouts an order. Then, silence. The kind of silence that almost hurts your ears. You lie on the thin mattress staring at the ceiling. The cell feels smaller now. The walls seem closer than they did yesterday. You try counting the hours. Eventually, you stop. Time already feels different inside Alcatraz. Morning arrives without sunlight. A loud bell cuts through the prison. You sit upright instantly. Before you can gather your thoughts, a guard's voice echoes through the cell block. Stand for count. You jump to your feet. Every prisoner does the same. You stand beside your bed without speaking, without moving. A guard slowly walks past every cell. He doesn't rush. He counts. One prisoner at a time. When he reaches your cell, he looks directly at you. For several long seconds, he says nothing. Then he writes something on a clipboard and continues walking. Only after he disappears do you finally breathe again. Breakfast comes next. The cell doors slide open all at once. Not a second earlier. Not a second later. Hundreds of steel doors moving together sound like thunder. You step into the corridor. Immediately, you notice something strange. No one is talking. Hundreds of prisoners walk in silence. Only footsteps. Only chains. Only guards giving commands. You follow the line toward the mess hall. Before entering, another guard stops everyone. He speaks slowly. If I hear unnecessary talking, the meal ends. Nobody tests him. Inside the dining hall, rows of metal tables fill the room. Every seat faces the same direction. You sit where you're told. A tray slides in front of you. Oatmeal, bread, coffee, nothing more. No one complains. No one asks for seconds. Everyone eats quickly. Not because the food is good, because they know exactly how much time they have. Halfway through breakfast, you glance toward another table. Several men have tattoos covering their arms. One has a long scar running across his face. Another never looks up from his tray. You recognize a few names from newspapers you once read. Bank robbers, kidnappers, murderers, men whose crimes shocked the country. Here, they all look exactly the same. Gray uniforms, short hair, silent. Alcatraz has taken away almost everything that made them different. After breakfast, you receive your work assignment, the laundry. The guard points toward a large industrial room filled with steam. Massive machines rumble without stopping. Piles of prison uniforms wait to be washed, dried, folded, and stacked. The work is repetitive, heavy, hot. Hour after hour, you feed wet uniforms into enormous presses. Nobody speaks unless absolutely necessary. You begin to understand something. Alcatraz isn't designed to exhaust your body. It's designed to control your mind. Routine, order, discipline. Every hour follows another. Every day follows the one before it. Eventually, they all begin blending together. Later that afternoon, a whistle echoes through the prison. Everyone immediately stops working. No hesitation, no confusion. The guards don't need to repeat themselves. Every prisoner already knows the consequences. Back inside your cell, the inmate across the corridor quietly gets your attention. He doesn't say his name. Neither do you. Instead, he asks one question. First time? You nod. He studies you for a moment. Then he says something you'll never forget. Don't fight the routine. It always wins. Before you can ask what he means, a guard appears. The conversation ends immediately. Hours later, you hear another prisoner shouting from somewhere nearby. The shouting becomes arguing. The arguing becomes screaming. Then, it stops. You hear heavy footsteps, metal keys, another steel door opening, another one closing. The next morning, the prison feels exactly the same. Only one thing has changed. The prisoner's cell is empty. Nobody asks where he went. Nobody needs to. That afternoon, a guard gathers several new inmates, including you. Without a word, he leads you down a narrow hallway you've never seen before. The air grows colder. The lights become dimmer. The corridor narrows until only one person can walk through at a time. Finally, the guard stops in front of a thick steel door. He unlocks it. The room beyond is almost completely dark. Rows of tiny concrete cells disappear into the shadows. No windows, no conversation, no sound. The guard finally speaks. D block. Then he points toward one particular row. Solitary. You break the rules, this becomes your world. You step closer. One empty cell sits with its heavy steel door open. Inside, there's almost nothing. A concrete bed, a toilet, darkness. You suddenly realize why grown men scream inside this prison. It isn't because they're being beaten. It's because they're being left alone. As the guard locks the heavy door again, the inmate beside you whispers just loudly enough for you to hear. Whatever you do, don't come back here. You nod slowly. Because for the first time since arriving on the island, you understand something. The bars aren't the worst part of Alcatraz. The silence is. And tomorrow, you'll discover that even silence can become dangerous. Level 3. Surviving the Rock. You stop counting the days. At first, you scratched tiny marks into the side of your shelf. 1 line for every day. 5 lines for every week. But eventually, you stop. Not because you've forgotten how long you've been here, because every day feels exactly the same. The bell rings. The count begins. Breakfast, work, count again. Lunch, work, another count, dinner, lockdown, sleep. Then it all starts over. Alcatraz doesn't need to confuse you. It simply repeats itself until time loses its meaning. You wake before the morning bell. Not because you want to, because your body has learned the prison's schedule better than your own. The cell is still dark. The air is cold. You sit on the edge of your bunk waiting. Seconds later, the bell echoes through the cell block. Right on time. Every time. You stand for the morning count. The guards already know where you'll be. They've counted you hundreds of times before. Still, they never skip a single prisoner. You begin to understand why escape is almost impossible. Nothing inside this prison happens by accident. Even your breathing feels scheduled. Breakfast passes in silence. You no longer look around the dining hall. You already know what you'll see. Gray uniforms, blank expressions, eyes fixed on trays. Some prisoners have been here for years, others for decades. You wonder if they still remember what freedom feels like, or if they've forgotten it completely. Back in the laundry, the machines roar louder than conversation ever could. Steam fills the room. The heat sticks to your skin. You load wet uniforms, fold dry ones, stack them, repeat, hour after hour. At first, the work felt exhausting. Now, it's almost comforting. Routine gives your mind something to hold on to. Because if your thoughts wander too far, they always return to the same place, home. You imagine your mother's cooking. The smell of fresh bread. Rain against your bedroom window. The sound of children laughing somewhere outside. Then a guard shouts your prison number. The memory disappears instantly. You're back on the rock. One afternoon, you notice a prisoner collapse beside one of the machines. He falls without warning. The room freezes. 2 guards rush over. A nurse arrives moments later. The man regains consciousness. He isn't injured, he's simply exhausted. The guards help him stand. Then, they send him back to work. Life inside Alcatraz doesn't stop because someone is tired. You begin watching the older inmates more carefully. They move differently, slowly, quietly, almost mechanically. One prisoner has spent over 20 years behind bars. He folds towels with perfect precision. Every fold is identical. Every movement practiced thousands of times. You wonder if prison created those habits, or if those habits are the only reason he survived prison. That evening, you finally speak to the man in the neighboring cell. Only a whisper, only when the guards are gone. How long have you been here? A long silence follows. Then, long enough. You wait. Eventually he continues. The first year, you think about escaping. The second year, you think about surviving. The third year, you stop thinking. His words stay with you all night. The next morning, your work assignment changes. The prison library, compared to the laundry, it feels almost peaceful. Rows of books line the walls. History, geography, mathematics, religion, even novels. For a few hours each day, your prison disappears behind printed pages. You travel through countries you've never visited. You meet people who never existed. You remember something Alcatraz almost took away. Your imagination. Then one afternoon, a guard quietly removes several books from the shelves. Minutes later, another inmate is escorted inside. You recognize him immediately. Everyone does. He's known throughout the prison. Not because he's violent, because he never stops planning. Every spare moment, he studies. Maps, engineering, mechanics, anything that might help him understand how things work. As he walks past, he doesn't look at anyone. But he quietly lets one sentence slip beneath his breath. Nothing built by man is impossible to leave. You pretend not to hear. So does everyone else. That night, you replay those words over and over. Nothing built by man is impossible to leave. The thought refuses to disappear. Days later, you notice something unusual. One inmate spends far longer than necessary cleaning the ventilation grill inside his cell. Another requests extra work in the maintenance shop. Someone else begins collecting small discarded objects that most people would ignore. Broken spoons, pieces of rubber, loose screws. Individually, they mean nothing. Together, they begin forming a pattern. You tell yourself you're imagining it. After all, escaping Alcatraz is impossible. Everyone knows that. The guards know it. The prisoners know it. Even the ocean knows it. Then one evening, as you're returning to your cell, a folded piece of paper slides quietly beneath your foot. You freeze. No one else seems to notice. You wait until the guards disappear. Then you bend down and pick it up. Inside, only 4 handwritten words appear. Tonight, after final count. You read the message twice. Your heartbeat quickens. Someone inside Alcatraz is planning something. Something dangerous. Something that could change the prison forever. And tomorrow, you'll have to decide whether surviving is enough or whether freedom is worth risking everything for. Level 4. The Great Escape. You don't sleep that night. Not because of the cold, because of the note hidden beneath your mattress. Tonight, after final count. You've read those 4 words so many times you no longer need the paper. Every possibility runs through your mind. It could be a trap. It could be a prank. Or it could be something prisoners have whispered about ever since you arrived. An escape. You tell yourself you'll ignore it. You're here to survive, not to become another headline. But curiosity is a difficult thing to imprison. The final count arrives. The guards move from cell to cell exactly as they always do. They glance inside, see a prisoner lying on each bed. Mark their clipboard. Continue walking. Nothing seems unusual. The lights dim. Silence slowly settles across the prison. You wait. 1 minute, 5, 10. Then, you hear it. A faint scraping sound. Not from the hallway. From inside the walls. You step quietly toward the back of your cell. The ventilation grill. The same grill you've watched another inmate clean for weeks. The scraping grows louder, then it stops. A whisper follows. Keep watch. Your heart pounds. You don't answer. You simply stand beside the bars, pretending nothing is happening. Minutes later, you hear another sound. A piece of concrete falls somewhere behind the wall. Then another. Tiny pieces. Almost impossible to hear unless you're listening for them. Suddenly, everything begins making sense. The spoons. The maintenance jobs. The extra time near the ventilation shafts. They weren't random. They were preparing. For months. Maybe years. The prison seems asleep. But hidden behind the walls, history is unfolding. You remain frozen. Every instinct tells you to alert a guard. Every instinct also tells you not to. You understand something most people never will. Inside prison, trust is more dangerous than violence. If the guards discover you're watching, the escapees may blame you. If the escape succeeds, the guards may question why you said nothing. There is no safe choice, only consequences. Hours crawl by. The scratching continues. Then, it stops completely. Silence. You wait. Nothing. Morning arrives. The bell rings. The guards begin the first count. Everything appears normal. Until one officer reaches the first escapee's cell. He pauses, looks again, then shouts, "Officer!" Several guards rush over. From your cell, you can only see pieces of what happens. One guard reaches through the bars and touches the prisoner's head. It rolls off the pillow. Not a real head. A fake one. Made from soap, paper, paint, human hair collected from the prison barber. Another cell. Another fake head. Then another. The entire cell block erupts. Sirens explode throughout the prison. Steel doors slam shut. Guards sprint through the corridors. Searchlights sweep every inch of the island. You hear orders being shouted from every direction. ELO count. Count every inmate. Check the roof. The prison you've known for months transforms in seconds. Armed officers race across the yard. Rifle towers scan the shoreline. Boats launch into San Francisco Bay. Helicopters circle overhead. You step toward the narrow window inside your cell. Far below, the water crashes violently against the rocks. Cold, dark, relentless. You remember what another prisoner told you on the ferry. The bay decides who gets out. For hours, nobody knows what happened. Then the rumors begin. The escapees dug through the concrete behind their cells. They crawled through maintenance tunnels, climbed onto the prison roof, used raincoats stitched together into inflatable rafts, slipped into the freezing bay under the cover of darkness. Some prisoners insist they drowned. Others swear they reached the mainland. The guards refuse to answer. Days pass. The prison remains locked down. Every cell is searched. Every mattress is cut open. Every wall is inspected. Every prisoner is questioned, including you. A guard sits across from you inside a small interview room. Did you know? You shake your head. Did anyone speak to you? You hesitate. Only for a second. No. He studies your face, long enough to make you uncomfortable. Then he stands. If you're lying, we'll find out. You return to your cell. Nothing feels the same anymore. The impossible has happened. Someone escaped Alcatraz. Or at least, they tried. From that day forward, the prison changes. Extra counts. More searches. More guards. More suspicion. Even the smallest mistake now earns severe punishment. The trust that barely existed before completely disappears. Weeks later, you overhear two guards speaking quietly outside the cell block. They'll never prove it. They're gone. Gone where? The older guard looks toward the bay. That's the mystery. You look through the bars toward the distant city skyline. It still seems close enough to touch. Yet somehow, it has never felt farther away. You realize something strange. Before the escape, you dreamed about leaving. Now, you think about something else. What happens to a man, after years inside Alcatraz, if he finally walks free? Because after living behind these walls, you begin wondering whether the prison stays on the island, or follows you for the rest of your life. And tomorrow, you'll discover that escaping Alcatraz is only half the battle. Level 5. When the mind becomes the prison. You stop wondering when you'll leave Alcatraz. Instead, you begin wondering who you'll be if you ever do. The days still begin the same way. The bell, the count, breakfast, work, another count, another meal, another night behind steel bars. Nothing changes. Until you realize that's exactly the point. Alcatraz was never designed to make time pass quickly. It was designed to make every day feel exactly like the one before it. The prison doesn't have to break your body. It waits patiently for your mind. You notice it happening to the men around you. One prisoner talks to himself while folding laundry. Another spends hours staring at the same crack in the wall. A third walks the exact same 6 steps inside his cell, turns, walks 6 steps back, and repeats the pattern until lights out. Every night, every week, every year. You begin asking yourself a frightening question. If you stay here long enough, will that become you? One afternoon, you're assigned to clean a rarely used corridor near D Block. The punishment wing. The guards call it routine maintenance. The prisoners call it something else. The end of hope. As you mop the concrete floor, a heavy steel door opens nearby. 2 guards escort a prisoner out of solitary confinement. At first, you barely recognize him. His beard has grown unevenly. His skin is pale. His eyes struggle against the light. He blinks over and over, as if sunlight has become unfamiliar. The guards support him as he walks. Not because he's injured, because he seems to have forgotten how. You watch him disappear down the corridor. One of the older officers notices you staring. Without looking up, he quietly says, 23 days. You look at him. That's all it took. Those words stay with you. That night, sleep doesn't come easily. You lie awake imagining complete silence. No voices, no footsteps, no books, no work, no conversations. Just you and your own thoughts. You finally understand why prisoners fear solitary more than almost anything else. It isn't the darkness. It's having no escape from your own mind. Weeks later, a new inmate arrives on your cell block. You can tell immediately he's different. His shoulders are tense. His eyes constantly scan the room. He speaks loudly, questions everything, challenges every order. You recognize the same confidence you carried when you first arrived. The confidence that says, they won't break me. The older prisoners don't say a word. They've seen this before. 3 days later, the new inmate refuses an order during inspection. He argues. The guard gives him one final warning. He refuses again. Within seconds, officers surround him. He's handcuffed, escorted away. You never see him for nearly a month. When he finally returns, he walks with his head lowered. He no longer argues. He no longer speaks unless spoken to. One of the prisoners quietly whispers. Now he understands. You don't ask what happened. You already know. The prison taught him. Not with violence, with isolation. Months pass. Your prison routine becomes second nature. You fold your blanket the same way every morning. You clean your sink at the same time each day. You polish your shoes until they shine. Not because anyone told you to. Because routine gives you something the prison cannot take. Control. Even if it's only over the smallest parts of your day. One afternoon, the prison chaplain visits your cell block. He offers books, letters, conversation. Most prisoners ignore him. You don't. He stops outside your cell. How are you holding up? You almost answer automatically. I'm fine. But something inside you stops. Instead, you tell the truth. I don't want to forget who I was. The chaplain nods slowly. Then he says something you'll remember for the rest of your life. The danger isn't forgetting your freedom. The danger is forgetting you deserve it. After he leaves, you sit quietly on your bunk. You think about your family. Their faces have become harder to picture. Their voices less familiar. That realization frightens you more than the bars ever have. You begin writing letters more often. Some receive replies. Some don't. Every envelope becomes proof that another world still exists beyond the island. A world with birthdays, rainstorms, children growing older, people falling in love. Life continues, with or without you. Then one cold morning, the prison loudspeaker crackles to life. Attention! All inmates remain in your cells until further notice. The guards move faster than usual. More officers arrive from other parts of the prison. Something is happening. You don't know what. Hours later, the truth spreads through whispers. Washington has made a decision. Alcatraz, the prison everyone believed would stand forever, is closing. At first, nobody believes it. How could the most secure prison in America simply shut its doors? Then you see something you've never seen before. Even the guards look surprised. You stand at the bars looking toward the bay. The same water that once felt impossible to cross. The same island that seemed permanent. For the first time since arriving, you allow yourself to imagine something you stopped believing in long ago. Walking out, not escaping, leaving, the right way. And tomorrow, the steel doors that defined your life for years will open one final time. Level 6. Leaving the rock. You wake before the morning bell. For years, that sound has controlled your life. It has told you when to wake, when to eat, when to work, when to sleep. Today, for the first time, you wake before it. Not because you couldn't sleep, because something feels different. The prison is unusually quiet. No shouting, no hurried footsteps, no clanging steel doors. Only the distant sound of waves crashing against the island. You sit on the edge of your bunk. You run your hand across the thin mattress. You look around the tiny cell, the metal sink, the narrow shelf, the concrete walls, the steel bars. You never imagined you would become so familiar with a room barely large enough to stretch your arms. Then the loudspeaker crackles to life. Attention! This institution will begin transfer procedures today. The words echo through every cell block. Nobody speaks. Even the guards seem unusually calm. For nearly 30 years, Alcatraz has held America's most dangerous prisoners. Now, its story is ending. The morning count finishes. The cell doors slide open. One by one, names are called. Some inmates are being transferred to other federal prisons. Others, whose sentences are ending, are preparing to leave federal custody altogether. You wait. Every name except yours. Then, you hear it. Your name. For a moment, you don't move. You've imagined this day hundreds of times. Now that it's here, it doesn't feel real. You step into the corridor carrying everything you own. It isn't much. A few letters. A worn Bible. A family photograph that was finally returned years after your arrival. A small stack of books. Everything fits inside one canvas bag. The guard leading your group isn't the same man who welcomed you to Alcatraz. He's older now, just like you. Gray hair replaces the dark hair he once had. Deep lines surround his eyes. As you walk together, he quietly says, "You made it." You glance toward him. "What do you mean?" He looks ahead before answering. "Most men survive prison. Not all of them survive themselves." His words stay with you. You pass through the same corridors you first walked years ago. The laundry room, the dining hall, the library, the workshops. Each place holds memories you never expected to keep. Not happy memories, important ones. You remember your first breakfast, your first inspection, the first time you heard a prisoner screaming in the middle of the night, the famous escape that changed the prison forever, the countless mornings that all blended into one. Somehow, every ordinary day became part of your story. Eventually, you reach the processing room, the same room where your freedom disappeared. A clerk opens a worn metal cabinet. He slides a small box across the desk. Your belongings. The wallet taken from you when you first arrived. The watch that stopped working years ago. A faded photograph. A few personal papers. You pick up the watch. The hands still point to the exact time it stopped. You smile quietly. Time never stopped, only the watch did. A guard hands you your civilian clothes. For a second, they feel unfamiliar. The fabric is softer than prison denim. The shoes feel lighter. When you look into the mirror, you hardly recognize yourself. You arrived at Alcatraz as one man. You are leaving as another. Not because prison made you stronger, because it forced you to discover who you were when everything else had been taken away. The final steel door opens. You step outside. Fresh air fills your lungs. It feels different, cleaner, lighter. The ferry waits at the dock, just as it did on the day you arrived. Only this time, your hands aren't chained. You step aboard. The engines rumble to life. Slowly, Alcatraz begins drifting farther away. You stand at the rail without speaking. The prison grows smaller with every passing minute. Its guard towers shrink into the fog. Its gray walls fade against the rocks. Soon, it becomes nothing more than another island in the bay. You think about the men who never left. The guards who spent decades walking those corridors. The escapees whose fate may never be known. The thousands of prisoners whose names history has already forgotten. Then you look toward San Francisco. The skyline appears larger with every minute. Cars move along busy streets. People hurry to work. Children play in parks. The world continued while you were gone. It always does. You realize something surprising. Freedom doesn't feel loud. It doesn't arrive with applause. It doesn't erase the years behind you. Freedom feels quiet, like taking a full breath after holding it for far too long. As the ferry reaches the mainland, you take one final look over your shoulder. Alcatraz is barely visible now. But you know something most people never will. The strongest walls were never made of concrete. The loudest prison was never the one filled with steel doors. It was the voice inside your own mind, telling you that tomorrow would always look exactly like today. You learned that hope can survive isolation. You learned that discipline can outlast despair. And you learned that even on an island surrounded by freezing water, the human spirit searches for freedom. Because some prisons lock away your body. Alcatraz tried to lock away your future. But as you step onto the dock, with no chains around your wrists, and the city stretching out before you, you finally understand something that no prison can ever take from you. A locked door can hold a person, but it can never imprison hope forever.